Welcome back to another episode of the Moments of Joy podcast, MVPs. I'm here today with Michelle Hobgood, and I have been following her, I think over a year now on social media. Followed her because she is a fellow mom raising and has raised a child who has autism. And so I'm excited to talk to her today. I'm excited to hear her wisdom, resources, and all the things. So, Michelle, would you introduce yourself furthermore to our listeners?
Hey, friends. What's up? So I'm not really I always get confused as to how to introduce myself, whether I am introducing myself as Michelle Hobgood, Devon's mom, an autism mom, OG autism mom, or Michelle Hobgood, the mompreneur, the tidy trainer, the fitness trainer, and the bestie, all those good things, Happy to be here.
And it is a need, let's say that, for you to introduce yourself as all of that, because you did this reel that I saw not too long ago, and you used 2 shower curtains, which was a game changer for all of us who used one, and it was a game changer. And I was like, oh my gosh, I would have never thought about that.
Listen, sis, you and 8.7 million other people that was so blown away by me just opening the 2 curtains and saying, use 2 curtains.
Yeah. So pretty.
I had no idea. I was just like, I'm just going to share what it is I do in my bathroom and how I take care of my son and how it's easier because, this is fit. And it just turned into this viral moment that I'm still shocked about.
And I'm glad that you share both sides of you on your page.
Thank you, because I'm still trying to figure it out.
Yeah, just stay right there. That's the lane. Both. Because I love both. And you never know who is an autism mom or, who may know someone that needs their services.
Yeah. It's tricky with that because, I have like the business coaches in your head and they're like, oh, you should only share this much on your business page and be careful when you share your business content on your personal page. But I know who I want. Like I'm sharing for a community on my personal page. I'm not there trying to sell anything or to, it's just more to like help folks, which is the reason why I came on Instagram in the first place is to help. Mm-hmm. When I was coming up, there was nobody around that was there to at least, to speak to, at least back 20 something years ago. So I always get a little tricky with like, oh, should I share this? But then I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to listen to the trends all the time. I'm just going to go with it.
There you go. And I'm glad you didn't. Well, let's get into it. You just told us that your son is 20 something. So let's talk about Devon. He is so cute. Such a handsome young man, because he's not a little boy. So tell us, let's bring us into the diagnosis a little bit.
Yeah, so Devon is 28. He has autism and cerebral palsy. He was born prematurely, probably about a month early. I was 19 when I had him. I was a freshman in college, and I remember having to drop out. My family is Caribbean from Trinidad, and I was the first person in my family to go to like a 4-year college. My mom had gone to a 2-year college, but I was the first one to kind of like go to college. So I'll never forget that once I became pregnant, my family was like super disappointed in me, and they were just like, oh, just your life is over, like you're a young single mom, like it's over for you. Like that's literally the whole vibe of what was. Goodness. That was going on. Like you throw your life, you throw your life away with this baby. Mm-hmm. Like, it was that type of situation.
Goodness.
I knew that I was determined to prove them wrong, even those that didn't have the audacity to say it to my face. And just being Caribbean, we are very outspoken. We are very outspoken people. So they say it, but they're saying it, even though they mean it with love, they're saying it anyway. So I had him when I was just at like my end of freshman year of college, and I had to drop out. And my experience with just the medical care, like I was under my mom's insurance, but then back then in New York, I'm from New York, there was a special insurance you could get that was through Medicaid. So you had like your wellness checkups and things of that nature. And
Right.
I was going to a great doctor. I was actually able to continue seeing my just OBGYN, my mom's OBGYN. And
Right.
all the checkups were fine. Like everything is
Right.
fine. I did all the
Wow.
tests. Back then they made you drink the glucose test with the disgusting
Mm-hmm.
syrup, and mind you, this is all close to 30 years ago, so I'm just going off of
Right.
memory. Some things are super vivid, while others are just kind of gray. So
Mm-hmm.
everything was fine with the test. Your baby's going fine, everything's fine. Um, I remember that he came. I was going into labor a little bit early, and one of the things that I didn't understand or didn't know was that okay, I had my OB. I knew that I was going to be going to which hospital I was going to be going to.
Right.
I didn't have like a birth plan and all this other stuff. It was just like okay, go into labor, go to the hospital, right?
Right.
So because he was early, my OB was on vacation.
Mm.
So I went to the hospital. I said I'm in labor, and they kept sending me back home. They're like,
Mm.
well, we don't do labor and delivery here, just delivery.
Wow.
So
Wow.
you have to come back when you're more dilated. I went to the hospital 4 times. And on the fourth time, I said, I am not leaving. And they finally admitted me. My mom who at the time, because my son was early, my mom was away in Canada because I'll never forget, it was something called Caravana, which is like
Mm-hmm.
a popular carnival, Caribbean
Yeah.
carnival in Canada.
Mm-hmm.
So she was away then, so she couldn't even be there to help to be with me.
My
So
goodness.
it was me and my son's father. We were at the hospital. We're both like young,
Young.
and we're
Yeah.
at a public hospital, and we're there, and I'm with a doctor now that's not my choosing, that I don't know
Right.
personally, that I don't. It's just like whoever's attending, whoever's on call. It's another Caribbean doctor. I'll never forget, a
Mm-hmm.
Black Caribbean doctor, and he comes in, and I wasn't dilated, and I just remember his vibe was just like super annoyed, just annoyed that I
Wow.
wasn't dilated. Um, I, I remember my water broke, and I started to kind of like, again, I'm 19 years old. I'm looking at the
19.
time. I thought I was grown. At the time, I'm like, I'm out of high
Come on.
school. I'm in college. I'm an adult. But
Can
now
we pause
looking
right
back,
there?
right?
I say that to my friends all the time. I see my kids now. My oldest son is 21, and I'm like, I really thought I was grown at 21,
Yes.
and I wasn't.
No, no. I just thought like I'm an adult.
Yeah.
I'm not what they call a quote unquote. I didn't consider myself to be like the high school teenage pregnancy because I was in college, so I thought I was an adult, which is so silly in my thinking.
Right.
Now that I look back as
Yeah.
an actual adult, I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
girl, you were so
You
lost
were a
out here in the
baby.
game. Like you were so lost. But
Yeah.
we're both young. He's my son's father was 2 years older than me, so but we were still both young, Black Caribbean, kids. Never really had been out of Brooklyn. We
Mhm.
just didn't know, right?
Right. Right.
So I start to give birth, and I start screaming because the pain that I was in was so intense. Plus, I'm having a baby early, right?
Mm,
It's like 30 days early, which to
mm,
me at this point should give them pause. Like, you're not due as yet. So this
right.
should be something that would put you in the hospital immediately so they can monitor and see what's going on. None of that went on. Okay. I just remember the doctor telling me, don't scream. Don't scream. And I just remember him yelling at me, and
Oh my goodness.
I muffled myself. My son's father just kind of like, he was holding me. He didn't know what to do because he's this older man who's also, we're like, how are you treating us like this? And you're also Caribbean.
Right.
Like,
Right. Right.
what? Where's your
Absolutely.
compassion?
Mm-hmm.
Regardless of whatever, like,
That's
you
right.
know. And I gave birth, and I'll never forget, my son came out, and he's like, the doctor,
Mhm.
every time I tell this story, I get really emotional, but the doctor's like, this baby's so small, you know, what's what's wrong with this baby? Like, and then he kind of like gave the baby to the nurse. And when my son was born, he had ear tags, like these little skin tags on the side of his ears. His
Uh-huh.
head was like really, really, really slanted and, pushed up.
Mm.
It's like a little cabbage patch. He had a little patch on the top of his
Mm.
head. And, he was crying, he was blinking slowly, and just the doctor like scoffing at my baby.
My
And
gosh.
I just remember like it literally was the worst experience of my
Oh
entire
my
life, right?
goodness. I am so
So
sorry that that happened to you. That is
thank
so
thank you.
horrible. And it makes me think about the maternal death rate, and especially in New York City. Because I
Yeah.
was watching a documentary about it called Aftershock on Hulu.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
that you represent these young mothers that are going in and sometimes unprepared and uneducated and dying at the hands of doctors who could care less.
Yeah. So
Wow.
my son stayed in the hospital for like a week. He had to have surgery because he was born with two inguinal hernias. So at
Okay.
3 months, they repaired his hernias. They removed the skin tags.
Yeah.
I'll never forget, like, I had to keep taking a taxi back and forth to the NICU because I was trying to get him to breastfeed, and, he wasn't able to latch on. And my breasts were engorged. Like, just the whole experience that first couple of weeks was
Mm-hmm.
very traumatic,
Mm-hmm.
right? And he came home from the hospital, and we're living our life. My mom's back home, and we're there. At the time, I was living with my mom,
Mm-hmm.
and I just remember as the months went by, my mom would say, that child ain't doing this, and that child ain't
Mm.
doing that, but he ain't doing so and so. He's not rolling over, like like just like typical like Caribbean things, and they're like, well, the child's supposed to do this, and he's supposed to do this,
Right.
and like the milestones. And
Mm-hmm.
I saw that he was doing that he was moving a little bit slower. He had just had his surgery, so I was like, well, he just needs a little bit of time, like just.
Yeah.
But once he
Yeah.
started to get to like closer to like a year, her
Mm-hmm.
voice was just like it was like a blowhorn in my ear. She's like, you need to take him to the doctor. You need to get him, let them check him out. So with reluctance, I took him to a neurologist, which was connected to the hospital that he was born at. He was still
Wow.
going for his checkups and his
Mm-hmm.
milestone checkups, and they would just kind of say, oh, he's kind of small, but they wouldn't like say you should do this, or he's kind of small, but they wouldn't say, well, here's what you can do. It's just like, oh,
Right.
oopsie, oh well, like that type of attitude. So I got him to the neurologist, and Camille, whoo, they tested him. He was about, I want to say, like 12 or 13 months old. They tested him, and they called me in for the results, and it was just like, whoo. I don't, every time I tell this story, I tear up. But so they brought me in for the results, and I'll never forget. It was a big room, and the doctor, the neurologist, was sitting at one desk in the room. It's very clinical. It was a cold, clinical type of room setting. And my son and I walk in. I pushing him in the stroller, and he's sitting behind the desk, and he has the file like with the results, and he has his glasses on, and he's not looking at me at all, and he's looking down at the paper, and he's like, yes, your son has developmental disabilities, mental retardation,
Oh,
cerebral palsy, pervasive developmental disorder, autism. He's not going to be able to talk. Okay, yes, set something up with the neurologist, and then that was it. Just follow up, and that was it. And I was just sitting there, and it was like an out of body experience where you're sitting there and you see the person talking and their mouth is moving, and it sounds like an echo.
right. Right.
And it's just like, you know something's happening, and you know that somebody's telling you that this is your future,
Oof.
but you're not processing it because you're just kind of like, WTF, like what's
Yeah.
happening here?
Yes.
Did he just say that my son is disabled? Like, at the time, I'm like, pervasive. He's dropping all these science things to me. I was 20 by then because my birthday had passed, and I'm like, pervasive. What? There was no Google. There was no like picking up your phone and Googling stuff.
Right,
This is
right.
1994. Okay, so it was just like, what is this man saying? I don't even understand. And then he just got up and walked out. And then I was just
Oh
like, well, I
my
have some
goodness.
questions,
Right.
because this is like a clinical setting. It's like a clinic,
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
because I had Medicaid, and that's what Medicaid pays for, right? So I was just like, well, I have some
Ooh.
questions. Like, what is it? I'm I'm very talkative when I go to the doctor. I'm going to tell you
Mhm.
all the things that's wrong, all the business, everything, so I can get the answers. And I'm like, could you sit and just talk with me? I have some more questions. And he is just
Yeah.
like, I have another patient.
My
Let the
goodness.
secretary know, and we'll make another appointment for you to come in and just talk about it. And then that was how the journey
That
started. That was
is
how it started.
horrible. My heart is physically aching at the reality. Even though that happened in 1994, I'm pretty sure around the world it's still happening. I had a little bit more compassion with Mason's diagnosis, but it's still the paper, and you're like, what? But all of that, mama, alone by yourself with no one to really tell you what this is. I know you spoke about your mom early on saying, hey, this baby's supposed to be doing this and that. And you had the defense that a lot of moms have.
Mm-hmm.
And I would like for you to address that defense. If someone's listening and they may notice something with their child, but they're defensive right now.
Yeah, I mean, my mom is the reason why I went and got him diagnosed, but I didn't want to listen to her. I was just like, not my baby.
Yeah.
Not my baby's fine. Like, oh yeah, he's 8 months and he's not doing this, this, and this. But I never had a baby before, so I can't
Right.
measure that to another baby because this is my first baby.
Yeah.
Um, and other family members saying, "Well, my baby did this when this happened," and I knew that because he was born prematurely, that there might be a couple of things that he would be slow to do. My next door neighbor at the time, she had her daughter. Her daughter was born at 5 months,
Right.
and she was in a
Wow.
hospital for a year, like just like going in and out of the hospital and all of these things because it took her a long time to do things. So in my
Mhm.
back of my mind, I was comparing. I was like, well, my son was
Right.
born prematurely. He's not going to do those things because he's already a little bit behind.
Right.
So I use that as a reason to not listen to my mom at first and just kind of put it off. But eventually, I started to see with my own eyes, like, wow, you know what? She's right. But let me just go and get a test and let them
Right.
tell me for myself. Like, let me hear it
Right.
from a medical professional that this is what the case is.
Yeah.
But it's totally normal to be in denial, but you can't stay there
Yes.
because
It
it's
is
at a
very.
detriment to your child. Because once I got him diagnosed, literally within like 6 months, he was in an early childhood intervention program as like
Yeah.
a toddler. And they would
Wow.
come and pick him
Mhm.
up in a little van, and they would have a little toddler car seat,
Mhm.
and they would take him to an early intervention program that he was in
Yeah.
since like about 2.5 years old.
Mhm.
So had I not listened to my mom and had I not come to terms with at least going to get a test because there's all these indications and
Yeah.
intuition, I would
Mhm.
have been doing him a disservice. He wouldn't have been
Yep.
getting the things that he needed from that young, which
That's right.
they are out there, at least in New York. New
Mhm.
York is definitely, if you're in New York, and
Mhm.
especially back then, there is a plethora of services that you have to get by law.
Yeah.
You're entitled to by law. Other states are different, but New York is an entitlement state. You are entitled
Mm.
to these services no matter what your income is
Yeah.
because of what happened at a place called Willowbrook here in Staten Island, a
Mm.
huge national neglect at this place. So,
Wow.
you
I'm gonna look
know,
that up.
yeah, like look it up. It's on YouTube.
Wow.
You're going to see Geraldo Rivera broke the
Wow.
story when he was a young reporter. And
Mm.
it's basically Willowbrook is basically the standard that set off because back then when Willowbrook was around, people sent their kids like hours away. They
Right.
didn't stay
Yeah.
home. They
Mhm.
were institutionalized. They
Yeah.
didn't care about your diagnosis. It was just like, well, you have a child that's quote unquote, which they use this term, your child's a retard or retarded.
Yeah.
That's basically what
Yeah.
they
That was
said.
the word.
And it's written down. You don't keep them at home. They go off to an institution where people can quote unquote take care of them. Well, at Willowbrook, so many people never kept their kids at home because that wasn't the norm, that
Woo.
literally almost every disabled person was living in this institution on Staten Island, and there was widespread neglect. People in closets,
Mhm.
people in bathrooms, feces. I mean, and the staff was overrun, so they had to like do this expose to expose the neglect that was happening. And once that was exposed, they changed all of these laws and came up with
Mhm.
all of these services so
These
that people
services.
that are like that can live at home with their parents, but the state would
Yeah.
pay for it and they would get the
Yeah.
services that they need, but at home. So
Mhm.
back
Ooh, I
then it was
feel
just like a
more.
couple of years after, but
Uh-huh.
we were lucky to get those services at a young age. So just circling back, like
Mm.
the services are there if you're
Yeah.
willing to come with the terms that you want to have your child get them.
Right. I'm sitting here like, oh, I should have put my waterproof flash glue on because I'm holding back my tears at several points. Ooh, just, you know, first of all, hearing stories, period, just grabs my heart. And
Mm-hmm.
we're only 22 minutes in, but I know that, some mom or dad listening is going to be impacted. Someone who notices, but maybe in denial. I was in denial too. The daycare
Mm-hmm.
provider pointed it out for me. And like you said, Mason had health issues. He had congenital heart disease. And I said, well, because he had 3 heart surgeries,
Mm-hmm.
maybe he's a little delayed. And I totally relate to that. So thank you for speaking to that. Now,
Happy to.
now, how do you move forward after early intervention and through school and high school? Well, first, I have a question. Did you ever feel like this was your fault?
Oh, of course. I mean, like I thought like there's something I did, something I drank. I used to exercise when I was pregnant. Like, did I work out too much?
Mm-hmm.
Um, just I totally blame myself. Like, oh, just yeah, absolutely. I
And did your
definitely.
family blame you?
Mm, no, I don't. My family didn't blame me, but I know that there was some sort of kind of like, we looked at history. Like my son's father had someone with Down syndrome on his side of the family, and so did I. So we were thinking like, okay, maybe it's history. But it was definitely a blame game between my son's father and I.
Yeah.
Um, like I was just like, oh, you smoking that marijuana? That's why
Yeah.
this happened. Or he's
Right.
like, oh, you out there work because I had to work. I worked throughout my whole
Mm-hmm.
pregnancy.
Mm.
I also worked at a place where it was like a law firm, and we had to take copies. It was a microfilm department, and we had to take copies
Yeah.
of legal papers. And I was thinking,
Mhm.
well, maybe it's like, even though
You're
I
out
had checked to
control.
make sure that I was going to be okay to sit in front of this machine and take copies during
Uh-huh.
my shift, I was like, well, maybe it was the job and the exposure from that caused this. So
Right.
yeah, I definitely blamed myself. But looking back, it's just like, well, you needed a job. What were
Right.
you supposed to do? Like, who?
That's
First of
right.
all, people weren't going to hire you when you were pregnant. At least they were very blatant about it back then.
Mm-hmm.
You had to hide it,
Mm.
uh, and I was lucky to hide it. And then once I started showing, they were like, "Oh, we didn't know you were pregnant," And I was just like,
Right.
"Yeah." So it's definitely a blame game, but
Mhm.
as I look back, I just think like, what could I have done? There's nothing I
Right.
could have done that was different.
Nothing
This
at
is
all.
just the way that it is, and this is the way that God made him. These are the cards that I've been dealt, and I'm gonna roll with it.
That's right. That's right. hmm There's plenty of hard days, but then there's absolutely beautiful days. And how old is Devon now?
He's 28 now. He just turned 28 on July 31st. Yeah. He just turned 28. So
Yeah, I
big
always
guy.
he's grown. I always I love to watch older children because we don't know what's ahead. And
Mhm.
I before I press record, I said, you all have wisdom, wisdom for the journey that we don't yet have with little babies.
Yeah.
And how, as he got older, around like middle school or high school days, how did that shift change? From little boy to now he's a bigger boy. You got so much that naturally is coming into play, hormones and
Mhm.
different things happening now that, okay, this is not the little baby anymore. Now this is a grown man. And is he potty trained?
No, he's not. I was
Mm-hmm.
never able to get him to go to the bathroom, or just because between school, my house, his dad's house, it just never quite stuck, no matter how we tried, and trying to even explain to him, like, when you have to pee, you should,
Right,
do this, and when you have to
right,
do this, you should do this. Like, it was just like he knew, but then he didn't know, and then he just
right,
wasn't able to say when it was time for him to use the bathroom, to find the place at that place,
right,
because it's like, okay, well, I need to find a bathroom,
right.
but now you have to say, well, where's the bathroom at the amusement park and school and
Mm-hmm.
my dad's house and my
Mm-hmm.
mom's house and grandma's house? Like,
Right.
it was, he didn't have the capacity to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So it ended up being hard. And there's like, a little bit of a threshold when you stop being able to get them
Right.
to do that. So that happened with us. Like, we did toilet training. We went to a toilet training therapist,
Mm-hmm.
when those actually became available many, many years ago. We tried up until he was probably like about 10, 11, and he just got so comfortable just, in that position, that he just kind of stayed with it, you
Mm-hmm.
know. Luckily, I've been able to find services where he can still go to, respite services, sleepaway camps, and things
Oh,
like
that's
that, where there's
beautiful.
staff that will change him.
Mm-hmm.
Because if someone's in a wheelchair and they're paralyzed, they might be in diapers as well,
Right.
So you find staff that is going to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And that worked all throughout high school, grade school. Here in New York City, there is a specific district for the developmentally disabled, District 75. It's like an
Wow.
entire school district
Mm-hmm.
of particular schools where the entire building is filled with people that are disabled. It's
Right.
not like a regular school where there's kids that might, be bullying and like, oh, making fun
Right.
of, thank God that's not the scenario here in New York, at least
That's
for where
beautiful.
my son is. So he's
Mm-hmm.
always been going to, from early childhood, all of his preschool to his high school, which high school for District 75 goes up until you're 21.
Right.
So he went up until he was 21 for District 75. And from there, he went to a day program, an adult rehabilitation program,
Mm-hmm.
and which is actually right around the corner from our apartment and where we live here in Brooklyn.
Mm-hmm.
And he gets to leave the house every day and have his peers, and he's so excited to go there. So that's basically the steps for someone like him, where
Yeah.
nonverbal, but he's still pretty aware of his surroundings and routine,
Mm-hmm.
what he likes, what he doesn't like. He has friends at the program. every Monday through Friday, he knows, like, okay, he's standing by that door, like, okay, it's time to go.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's been
I
like
saw your video of him. Like, he's ready to go. The van is
yeah,
coming.
yeah, pretty much,
Yeah.
So for someone like him that doesn't, you know, that's not necessarily, I don't know. Every time I use these terms, it's like, okay, people, we don't say that anymore. And I just be
Right.
like, look, my son is 28 years old, and
Right.
we went from literally people saying my son, like, your son's retarded, like that was the
Right.
terminology, to
Mhm.
now I
Right.
don't say that word, but
Right.
now it's like, okay, you shouldn't say special needs, that's offensive.
Mhm.
You should
Yeah.
say person first, and then
Mhm.
you say person with autism, and
Mhm.
then that person might say, no, I prefer autistic.
Autistic. Yeah.
So it's just like,
Neurodivergent. All these things.
I
Yeah.
respect what the person wants, but
Mhm.
also my thing is always to act like, don't come on my page and try to
Right.
correct me as a Black mom and tell me what
Right.
terms I should use. That's offensive to you,
Mhm.
because another person with the disability might not be offended by that, right? So
Yeah. Absolutely.
he's not as high functioning, where some kids with disabilities might be able to go off to college and get a
Right.
job and things of that nature. He's not able to do that. So if you are a parent like me, day program, if you're in New York, would be the next and last step after college.
Right.
So they don't have to stay home with you all day, which they
Mhm.
shouldn't. They
Right.
should still keep a routine, get out of the house, go to this day program or some kind of program where they can be around peers, go on trips, be around people like them, have friends. It doesn't have to be the end. And I know that
Right.
there are a lot of older parents that are like, well, I don't trust anybody, so I'm not going to send them
Right.
I'm not going to send them out after they're done in high school because I don't trust it. But it's not good. You don't want them to be at home with you,
Yeah.
because you also need a break.
Yeah, you do. Come on. The break is necessary. Now, did you take advantage of the disability waiver?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So in New York,
I hear New York has
um,
a great one.
oh
A great
yeah,
one.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. We definitely. I'm so glad that we got that waiver. It's called a Medicaid waiver,
Yeah, Medicaid waiver.
home community based services,
Mm-hmm.
which is that usually that all came about after Willowbrook. So yeah, the waiver, he has that. It covers all of his day program, or if he was in high school, any physical and occupational therapy. And when he was about 13 years old, I was able to get him a home health aide, with doctor's prescription and doctor's care and everything like that. And we now have an aide that comes pretty much every day, 7 days a
Mm-hmm.
week, to help
Right.
out with him. And that was not an easy journey, but we have
Yeah.
someone now that's been with us for over 10 years, the same
Oh,
person.
that's good.
And
We tested it
yeah,
out here. I went through three, and by the third, I was exhausted. I was like, I need a break. We'll try again later. They weren't
yeah,
bad. One I let go because she raised her voice at Mason, and I was in the house. The second one, she left the agency, and we really, really loved her. I was heartbroken. The third one, I let my older son be his aide, and I had to fire him. He was trying to get paid on the job and not do the job.
Oh Lord, yes, I know, because it's like the family. You can choose the person. Yeah, yeah. But don't give up, though. Don't give
Okay.
up. And no matter,
Oh,
please, 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 no matter what happens, do not give up.
okay.
I want you to be prepared for the worst,
Yeah.
but also be prepared for the best. And you need to have the patience in between the two,
Okay.
because it's
Okay.
you will find someone. High
Right.
turnover is normal.
Yeah. Okay.
Um, you will find people that you think is great on paper. The agency sends them to you, and they turn out to be an absolute nightmare.
Yeah.
I had an aide that literally left my son at home, but I caught her when I was coming home early that day. Something told me to leave early that day, and I was walking down the block, and I see the lady walking towards me, and I'm like, "Where's my son?" And she claims that she was going to the payphone because I had left my house phone in my bedroom, and I usually lock
Right.
my door. So I guess
Right.
she was coming and using my phone every day.
Oh
And because
my
the phone wasn't
goodness.
accessible, she left him in here and went to the payphone. But God showed me that, like he
Right.
showed me that,
Right.
because if I had not come home early, this woman had 4 kids of her own. I'm like, she's
Mm-hmm.
great. She's amazing. I love
Right.
her.
Right.
But meanwhile, you're sneaking and doing stuff like this, right? So
Right. Yeah.
you're gonna get the discernment to find the right people, and then when you find that person, do your absolute best to make them feel like family, make them feel like, you know, a king and queen in your home, and treat them with the utmost respect. We did a live on, having home health aides in the home on my IG page, and that's one of the things. Like, a lot of families like give up after like 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, and they're like, "I'll forget it. They're
Yeah.
all the same," but they're not. I want to tell you that they're
Okay.
not. So don't give up on it.
Okay. I won't, because we need the help. So, my therapist is like, Camille, you need to try again. I'm like, I will one one day, but I'll get back at it. And it's not
Yeah,
like we don't need it. We do.
yeah, yeah,
Because it's
absolutely.
really only me and my husband here.
Yeah,
So that can feel single parentish. He hates when I say that, but he has to watch Mason while I'll go somewhere, and I have to watch Mason while he's there. And so it's like a separate,
mhm,
shift. It's your shift. It's my shift. You know,
right,
of course,
right,
we have them together too, but we need someone to help so we can go.
right, exactly. Yeah, and
Yeah.
that's what that's for.
Mm-hmm.
Take
Absolutely.
advantage
So
of it. Keep
now,
trying.
no, you ended up getting married,
Yeah,
right?
I
And so
did.
how was that um with him accepting your son and all the things?
So, a friend, I went to meet a friend at a Lauryn Hill concert, and she showed up with him. I was like, this tall white dude, what is he doing over here in Brooklyn? Like, what is this? He's like 6'2". I'm like, so we met at the Lauryn Hill concert. We hit it off, and
Wow.
we were married like 1 year after we met.
Oh my
Um,
goodness.
and the minute that he met Devon just loved him. They clicked automatically, and he has been the greatest dad. If you ask him, like, that's his son.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have any kids of our own together. We decided that, that's not in the cards for us, because,
Mm-hmm.
it's very hard as it is right now with just Devon. And we
Right.
managed to make it work. But he's been great. Yeah, he's been absolutely wonderful. My son loves him. You
Yeah.
know, they
That's
they are just thick
beautiful.
as thieves, thick as thieves. And I
Mm-hmm.
want to tell those parents out there, the single moms, do
Yeah.
listen. Keep your heart open. You
That's
you
right.
know, just be open to love. Forget
Mm-hmm.
about all the other things, because I didn't think that I was ever going to get married. I didn't
Mm-hmm.
think that it was in the cards for me. There were some dark, deep times I was just like, no one's gonna want me with a disabled child. No one's gonna want to take on this burden, quote unquote, because that's how people viewed me. They
Mm-hmm.
would, even when I would go and take my son when he was younger to like friends of birthdays and family events and stuff,
Yeah.
he would be there stimming, and
Yeah.
the other regular kids would be around, and I would be sitting there feeding him and,
Yeah.
taking care of him, and people would just kind of
Yeah.
be like staring, and just
Yeah.
kind of like, you could feel like them looking down on you, like, oh, poor Michelle,
Mm-hmm.
like, like that type of situation.
Right.
And then I internalized that and never
Mm.
really thought like, yeah, no, I'm not going to find anyone, right? But it's not. I want y'all to know that's not true. There is somebody out there. There's a lid for every pot, like we say in the Caribbean,
Yeah.
and you're gonna be. You just have to be open to it and know that you you deserve it. You deserve it.
Yeah.
You are not a burden. And once I got rid of that thinking and knowing that I have something to offer and my son has something to offer, we are not a charity case. We are
That's
not,
right. That's
and
right.
by then I had also worked on myself.
Mm-hmm.
I met him at a time where I was just like, I'm not looking for love. I'm happy in my experience. I'm happy with my son. I'm happy with my job. I had my own place. I had just moved
Mm-hmm.
into a new apartment. I was independent. I was making good money. I didn't need anybody. I didn't need
Right.
anybody to come save me or take care of me, and it worked out. I met him at a time where I worked on me, and
Yeah.
then just God sent me that person that I could partner with.
Mm-hmm. Wow. That is so beautiful. I'm looking at the time and we have to wrap up, but I could ask you 50 more questions. Like, I want to know everything. But one thing I do want you to touch on is how you are able to pour into yourself. I'm always talking about mental health. I do mental health Mondays, but because I hit a point where I'll say I was about to lose it.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized I needed to go to therapy, that carrying the load of raising a child with a disability was heavy. And then I actually have 5 kids, and then I'm a wife, and then, I'm a sister and a mother. I could talk to somebody. I've been through trauma in my past as well. So all that in the pot, I need to talk to someone. But I've been talking about it. And I'm noticing one by one, I'm watching my followers who became friends like yourself.
Mm-hmm,
I'm watching some
mm-hmm.
of them. So one of my friends, she passed out in her front yard, and she was saying, guys, take care of yourself. Another friend is losing it. And I'm like, we have to take care of ourselves. I keep saying it. And I heard someone say, a guy, which guys are different. That's not going to help. I'm like, yes, it is. You didn't even try. Meanwhile, you're losing it. We have to pour into ourselves. So what do you do to make sure that Michelle has been poured into and she is mentally strong and physically strong?
Well, first of all, it's a work in progress every day, right?
Mm-hmm.
So some days you're going to feel great, and other days you're just going to wake up and just be like, oh my goodness, what is going on? And that's me. Like, I definitely, I have a therapist. I didn't have one for years because I just couldn't find one. Like, it was tough. It was hard to find one. And I recently, have found one. Because I wanted someone that was, a Black woman. They had to be someone that could help with trauma, because I had gone through like some medical trauma with just surgeries that I had for hernia repair a couple of years ago, and also not realizing my birthing experience was traumatic, and I was holding that in. And you are living each day, day in and day out, just going through your life, and you're not taking time to process that. You're just like, oh, this is just life. This is just this. I just get up and I do it, right?
Yeah.
And so the mental, speaking to someone, finding a therapist if you can, if that's not within your means, joining a group. If that's not within your means, find like-minded families, parents like yourself on social media, on Facebook. There are tons of groups. This is not like, a replacement for actual therapy, but now there's so many avenues that can be cost effective to, speaking to a mental health professional, that, there are lots of opportunities if you want to find it, right? Mm-hmm. And as far as pouring in, honey, listen, when it's time to go, I go, honey. Like, I don't, I go on vacation with my friends, by myself. Even when I was a single parent, I would plop my son at my mom's house. I'm not that mom that's like, oh, let me do it alone. No, boo-boo. Like, I would take him to my mother's house. He would go with his dad, and I would go and take a trip.
Yes. That's
right. To this day, I go to the movies alone. I like going to the movies. That's my thing. I have a membership for AMC. I go to the movies every week by myself. I sneak my food in, and I just veg out. I just escape into somebody else's life. And I am just like, it's like an out-of-body experience. I recline the chair, and I'm just like, it's like, like, I'm so happy. And it's like, my friends make fun of me. Like, Michelle is the movie queen. I love TV. I like to escape watching TV. 2 a.m., 3 a.m., when they're all sleeping, I'm back here in the quiet watching TV, and there's not a sound. That's my self-care. Going to the gym, taking care of me in the gym, and just finding that time. So I don't let that guilt. So, I should do it all. No, I don't. I'm not doing it all. And
I know that's right.
If you don't have, there's parents that actually have to do it all. So if you have the means to get help, honey, take advantage of it. You don't need to do it all if you don't have to.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so, so much. This conversation has been amazing. And I'm just looking at you like, wow, you've given us like another person to hold hands with and say, wow, I got this. Like she showed us we're going to be all right. You know, I always pretend that there's links every time I meet a new person. Wow, there you go. I'm grabbing onto this link. I got another link, and then it makes this big chain of people that we are community. And it's been just a pleasure to watch your journey and watch your son, and he brings joy to all of our lives. So thank you for sharing him. Thank you for your courage to be transparent when people are so mean on social media sometimes. And as you mentioned, just using different terms. I use the term special needs, but I use disability as well. I use special needs because I know many parents don't even know that autism is a disability and have not grasped it yet, have not accepted it yet. And so I use special needs to draw them in and then, try to educate. But then at some point, it's everyone's prerogative, as Bobby Brown used to say. Use and whatever term you
want. Respect what they want.
And for us as parents, it's not about a term. We're living in this real world right here, raising the children, and I think we need a little bit more grace given. So
absolutely.
Thank you so much for joining us today. Is there any last words that you would like to leave with any of the parents that might be listening today?
I would just want to say, don't do it all if you don't have to. Taking care of yourself is not selfish.
That's right.
You have to put your oxygen mask on first. If you're worn out, you're no good to your kids if you're worn down. So if you have the means to take care of it, even if it's just hide in the closet for 5 minutes, I've definitely done that before. Start in small steps, but don't put yourself last on the list because you're hurting yourself in the long run and your kids. So that's what I want to leave everyone with. And I'm so happy to be here, and thanks so much for having me.
You're so welcome. Before you go, tell the listeners where they can find you on social media.
Oh, yeah. So on social media for, family, mompreneur stuff, I'm at It's M. Hobgood. It's a wonderful last name. That's my husband's last name. People always ask me Hobgood. Is that I'm like, no, it's an actual name. And for those of you that are interested in just rallying up and taking care of your home, your space, I have a business called The Tidy Trainer, and it's a home organizing business that we help you whip your space into shape so you can feel good about coming home. And it's directly related to me as an autism parent. Having organization in my home helps me so much that I want to share that with everybody else. When your home is in disarray and you're surrounded by clutter, that really messes with the mental weight, So this business that I have here is to, try to rectify that. And my bottom line is helping people. So, that's what we're doing. So it's The Tidy Trainer, and it's M. Hobgood.
All right, that's awesome, and I'll put both of those in the description of the show so they can find you.
Yeah,
all right, thank you so much, listeners. Don't forget that you always have the option to choose joy, and we'll check you on the next episode. Bye bye.